After my son passed, I expected grief. I expected silence. I never expected my daughter-in-law to shove my packed bags at me and say, "You can't stay here anymore." She thought I had nowhere to go. But I had something far better, a plan. And when I was done, she wouldn't just lose the house, she'd lose the game she thought she was winning. They say time doesn't heal everything. And whoever said it was right, because nothing about losing your child ever feels whole again. My son Thomas was the only good thing I had left after my husband passed away. And when cancer took him too, all I had left was a cold house, filled with someone else's rules, and my name scratched off every piece of love that remained. Thomas had married a woman named Rachel. She was all sharp cheekbones and sharper words, always polite when Thomas was in the room, but once he left, her smile would tighten like a knot. I tried, I really did. I bit my tongue. I let her rearrange my kitchen. I smiled when she called me Mom through gritted teeth. But after Thomas died, that fake kindness died with him. At the funeral, she didn't even sit next to me. I was on the second pew, tucked beside my cousin Jeannie, while Rachel stood front and center, holding back crocodile tears in designer sunglasses. When she gave her speech, she mentioned her pain, her strength, her loss. Not once did she look my way. Not once did she say the word mother. I moved in with them 5 years ago when Thomas insisted. "You'll have your own room, Ma," he'd said, rubbing my shoulder. "We want you close, okay?" Rachel hadn't wanted me close. She'd tolerated me. And after the funeral, it became painfully obvious that my welcome had expired. The morning after we buried him, she slid a cold plate of toast in front of me at the kitchen island and said, "So Evelyn, what are your plans now?" I blinked. Plans? Yes, like, living arrangements. "You're probably going to want to be near your sister, or someone else. This house must be painful for you." It was the way she said "someone else" that burned in my ears. "I thought I'd stay here for a little while longer," I replied quietly. "At least until I sort things out." Rachel gave a brittle smile. "Of course. A few weeks, then." That night, she started locking the wine cabinet. The following week, she accidentally threw out my medication. Said it must have gotten mixed up with some expired stuff. Then she started letting the grandkids eat in my room. Crumbs, stains, juice boxes on my side table. Little things. Intentional things. I held my tongue. Again. Until the morning she packed my things without telling me. I came home from the store with a bag of oranges and some broth for my aching joints, only to find my suitcase in the hallway. Rachel stood near the stairs with a smirk. "I had some time today. Figured I'd help you get ready. Todd said you used to talk about retiring near the ocean. Florida, wasn't it?" I stared at her, my heart pounding in my ears. "You're kicking me out." "It's not kicking you out, Evelyn," she said sweetly. "It's just time. No warning. No decency. Just bags by the door like I was some old housekeeper who'd overstayed her shift." I didn't say a word. I just nodded. And I walked out. But I didn't go to Jeannie's. I didn't call my niece. I didn't even cry. Instead, I checked into a cheap roadside motel 3 towns over. $58 a night. No hot water, but the clerk was kind and helped me carry my bags. And for the first time in weeks, I had a quiet place to think. To plan. You see, what Rachel didn't know, or didn't care to remember, was that after my husband died, I never stopped working. I had a little tailoring business for years. Then I sold antique dolls on Etsy. I invested smart. I lived frugally. And every penny I didn't spend on rent, bills, or Thomas's college went into a high-interest savings account under my name. Rachel had the house. But I had money. More than she could imagine. I hadn't told Thomas. I wanted to surprise him one day, maybe help him and the kids buy a second car or fund a dream trip. But that day never came. Instead, I was going to use it to take back my dignity. The motel had spotty Wi-Fi, but it worked just enough for me to browse the county website. I looked up property tax records, deeds, ownership, and I noticed something curious. The house Thomas and Rachel lived in, my house too, until she shoved me out, had been bought in Thomas's name only. Rachel had never added herself to the deed. Legally, she was a tenant. My fingers started shaking as I clicked deeper. The mortgage had been nearly paid off. There was a clause in the will that hadn't gone through probate yet. Thomas hadn't finalized the paperwork before his death. Which meant, technically, there was a window. A small one. But one I could squeeze through. I called a lawyer the next morning. His name was Joe Kellerman, old family friend. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he remembered me instantly. "Evelyn, you want to file a challenge?" "I want what's mine, Joe. And I want to do it quietly." He took the case. Over the next few weeks, I started working at a local diner. Part-time hostess. Just to stay busy. I tucked my hair into a bun, wore beige cardigans, smiled at customers like nothing was brewing beneath my ribs. But it was. Every coffee I poured, every booth I wiped, it all fueled the fire. I was going to take back what Rachel tried to bury me with. And when I did, I wasn't just going to get back into that house. I was going to own it. Every square inch. I kept working at the diner, folding napkins and taking names for brunch tables, while Joe, my lawyer, filed a quiet petition for property reassessment. He didn't raise any red flags. He knew how to move softly in court. And I knew how to stay invisible. 3 weeks in, Rachel texted me. "Hope you're settled somewhere, Evelyn. Just wanted to confirm you're not coming back." "No, how are you?" "No, do you need anything?" Just that smug, controlling tone. I didn't answer. I had nothing to prove to her, not yet anyway. Instead, I made another call. To the county clerk's office. I asked about deed transfers, time frames, and estate claims. When I gave them Thomas's name, they hesitated. But then the woman on the line said, "Oh yes, we've had some requests come through for that property. It's still pending resolution." Perfect. That meant Rachel hadn't made her move yet. She probably assumed, like she always did, that the house was just hers now. That everything tied to Thomas belonged to her. But no. Thomas had left no will. Just a messy probate file and a widow too arrogant to think she'd need legal proof. By the second month, I had the court date. It wasn't a hearing. It was more of a filing appointment, a clerk-level review of property inheritance. The kind where they glance over paperwork and signatures and decide whether the petition seems reasonable. I wore my best blue cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons. I pinned my thinning silver hair neatly behind my ears and carried my leather folder like a warrior carried her shield. Joe sat beside me, calm as ever, while the clerk skimmed through the file. "You lived there?" she asked me. "Yes," I said. "For 5 years. Paid for groceries, helped with the kids, cleaned, cooked. I wasn't a guest. I was family." And for the first time in months, my voice didn't shake. By the time we left the office, I had an official review scheduled in 30 days. Now came the fun part. Rachel still didn't know. She probably thought I was at some nursing home, wasting away. Maybe she pictured me playing bingo, forgotten. Maybe she even told her friends how kind she was to let me stay as long as she did. So I made sure my next move was poetic. I started spending time at the public library, where I could use the internet for free. I looked up property listing services, private investors, trust buyers. I wasn't planning to sell the house, no. I just needed to let the market know who the rightful owner was. And then I listed it under my name, as pending legal ownership transfer on several platforms. Within days, Rachel found it. I know because she showed up at the diner. I was wiping down the pastry case when I saw her walk in, high heels clicking on the tiles like a threat. She looked completely out of place in her silk blouse and oversized sunglasses. "Evelyn," she said through a clenched jaw. I smiled. "Welcome to Sunnyside Cafe. Table for one." Cut the act. "What the hell do you think you're doing listing my house for sale?" The customers nearby turned to look. I leaned forward and lowered my voice. "My house, dear. You were never on the deed. And you kicked out a beneficiary before the estate was closed. That was unwise." She blinked, her painted lips parting slightly. "You're bluffing. Check the county records." Then I turned around and refilled a customer's coffee. Just like that. She left in a storm of perfume and rage. Later that night, Joe called. "She tried filing an emergency injunction to block your petition. It got denied." "Why?" I asked. She has no legal standing. The house wasn't hers. She was only living there because of your son. And she never filed to claim tenancy. I let out a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding. I had won round one. But I wasn't done. You see, revenge isn't about shouting. It's about precision. I didn't want to just reclaim the house. I wanted to make her feel what I felt, discarded, overlooked, alone in a place that used to feel like home. So when I got the legal notice confirming the property had been temporarily placed in my name pending final probate, I didn't go back and demand she leave. No. I called a locksmith. And changed the locks while she was out. That night, she returned to find her key useless and a notice taped to the door. This property is under new ownership. Please contact legal counsel for next steps. She called me 32 times. I didn't answer a single one. The next morning, the sheriff showed up, not to arrest me, but to ensure she left peacefully. The paperwork was clean. The process was legal. And Rachel, in her robe and slippers, was escorted to the curb with nothing but a suitcase and a shocked expression. I watched from across the street, sitting inside a black sedan I'd borrowed from a friend. And for the first time in months, I smiled. But I wasn't cruel. Not entirely. She had 2 small children. My grandchildren. I didn't want them homeless. So I offered her a deal, through Joe. She could move into a small duplex on the other side of town. Rent-free for 6 months. I would even cover their school fees during that time. But she had to sign over full rights to the property, withdraw any future claims, and write a formal letter of apology for attempting to remove me unlawfully. It wasn't about the letter. It was about making her admit, in writing, that she tried to erase me. She signed it. Begrudgingly. But she did. And then, I moved back into the house. I kept Thomas's photos on the wall. Set out his favorite coffee mug on Sundays. But I changed everything else. New curtains. New paint. New rules. Because this time, it was my home. And no one, was ever going to kick me out again. There's something about reclaiming a space that once rejected you. When I walked through that front door again, the same one Rachel had slammed behind me 2 months earlier, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a battlefield I had just won. The first thing I did was strip the place of her taste. The cold gray throw pillows she'd scattered around, gone. That sterile modern art she'd hung in the hallway? Hauled it to the curb. I opened all the windows and let the breeze sweep through the house. I played Frank Sinatra on Thomas's old speakers. And for the first time since he died, I let myself cry freely, not because I was hurt, but because I was finally free to be angry without shame. I wasn't just grieving my son anymore. I was grieving the illusion that I ever had a real place in his family after he passed. Rachel hadn't just pushed me out of a house, she tried to erase my role as Thomas's mother. As if, with him gone, I was just extra weight. Disposable. A relic from a chapter she'd already closed. But I wasn't a footnote in his story. I was the first page. Still, I didn't want to let anger rule me. I wanted something bigger, clarity, justice, and yes, a little poetic vengeance. The kind you sip slowly, like sweet tea on a summer porch. So I started with the little things. I had the locks changed again. Upgraded security system. Cameras installed, not just for safety, but for peace of mind. I even set up motion alerts just in case Rachel tried something foolish. She didn't. Not at first. I think she was hoping I'd eventually get soft. That I'd come knocking, asking to see the kids. But I didn't. I waited. Instead, I hired a landscaping crew. Thomas had always talked about planting a vegetable garden, and now I had the time, the space, and the power to do it. I hired a tutor for the kids and offer her the same deal I'd given Rachel. I'd cover their schooling if she kept her distance. If she tried to drag the children into our feud, court would hear about it. Eventually, she took the offer. But it didn't stop her from trying to get under my skin. She started posting things online, little jabs. Some people pretend to be saints just to play victim. A free house doesn't make you family. Oh, I saw it all. Her friends, the shallow manicured ones, would comment with crying laughing emojis or heart reacts. But I never replied. Never even acknowledged it. Instead, I made a very deliberate choice. I took over Thomas's memorial fund. It was something he'd set up before he passed, a small fund for scholarships to local high school seniors going into engineering, his field. Rachel had been ignoring it for months. Probably because it wasn't flashy enough for her social media image. I updated the name. From the Thomas Hargrove STEM Initiative to Thomas and Evelyn Hargrove Future Builders Fund. I hosted a community dinner in the backyard to announce it. People came from across the neighborhood. Old co-workers of Thomas's. His high school shop teacher. Even the pastor from the church we used to attend before Rachel took over our holidays with her fancy catered affairs. People remembered me. They remembered us. And when Rachel saw the pictures online, of me cutting the ribbon, smiling with a group of students in front of a new memorial garden, she showed up at my door. I was expecting her. She didn't knock. Just stood there, arms crossed, wearing those same oversized sunglasses like she was hiding behind them. "I see you're trying to play saint now," she said. "No," I said calmly. "I'm just honoring my son. Something you forgot to do once the spotlight moved on." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't over," she hissed. I tilted my head. "It already is. You just haven't accepted it yet." She tried to speak again, but I shut the door. Later that week, I received a letter. She'd filed a motion claiming emotional distress over the eviction. Said I'd manipulated the legal system to gain access to the home. Joe handled it like swatting a fly. "Files full of nonsense," he told me. "We'll respond, but it's not going anywhere." I wasn't worried. But I was tired. Not of fighting. I had enough grit in me to go 10 more rounds. No, I was tired of pretending Rachel's opinion of me still held any weight. I didn't want her approval. I wanted distance. Closure. So I made one final move. I rewrote my will. Everything, the house, the fund, the contents of my safety deposit box, was placed in a living trust. With one condition: if any attempt was made by my daughter-in-law to contest my wishes or defame my character in any legal form, her children, my grandchildren, would still be taken care of, but she would receive nothing. Not a cent. Not a spoon. I did it not out of spite, but out of protection. For myself. For my legacy. For the dignity Rachel tried to strip from me. The house became a quiet place again. I filled it with little signs of life: hummingbirds at the feeder, fresh rosemary in the kitchen window, a scrapbook of Thomas's childhood I hadn't looked at in years. And I kept busy. I tutored local kids in the afternoons. Started hosting game nights with my neighbor, Edith, who taught me how to play bridge properly. I was 80 years old. Alone. But never lonely. And every now and then I'd get a letter, a real one, from one of the scholarship kids. "Thank you for believing in me. You changed my future." My mom cried when I told her. And I'd smile. Because that was the legacy I wanted, not bitterness, not courtrooms. Just impact. But I kept Rachel's letter too, the one where she tried to claw back what she threw away. I kept it in the bottom drawer, folded neatly, a reminder of what I survived. What I overcame. What I took back, one silent, steady step at a time. I wasn't expecting the invitation. But there it was, a shiny gold envelope left in my mailbox, tucked neatly between the coupons and junk flyers. A baby shower. Rachel was pregnant again. The envelope was embossed, the kind she probably paid a small fortune for. Inside was a printed invite with floral borders and her name in cursive font, no mention of Thomas, of course. Just her and the baby. She was hosting it at a private venue on the lake, family and close friends only. And yet, she sent one to me. I didn't react right away. Just stood in the kitchen, envelope in hand, coffee growing cold in the mug beside me. Was it a peace offering? A trap? Or a performance? I suspected the latter. Rachel never did anything without an audience. And with Thomas gone, she'd worked hard to shape her image. The grieving widow, the strong single mother, the generous woman who took in her husband's poor old mother, until she lashed out. I'd heard the whispers. Seen the comments online. But still part of me, the tired, scarred part, almost wanted to believe it was genuine. That maybe, for the baby's sake, she was trying to reconnect. To repair. So I went. I wore my best dress. Navy blue, with a brooch Thomas had given me years ago. I had my hair done and wore the pearl earrings Rachel once said were too old-fashioned for her taste. If I was going to be seen, I'd be seen with dignity. The event was as over-the-top as I'd expected. Balloon arches, a chocolate fountain, custom napkins with the baby's initials, and people posing for Instagram like it was a celebrity wedding. I stepped through the glass doors of the lake house and felt all eyes shift toward me. Some smiled politely. Others whispered. Rachel was in the center of it all, wearing a tight cream dress that showed off her bump, surrounded by a group of women who clung to her every word. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She just smiled wide, that fake camera-ready kind of smile, and air-kissed my cheek. "I'm so glad you came," she said sweetly, loud enough for those around her to hear. "It's been so long." I nodded, calmly. I figured it's good to check in on the future tenants. She blinked, confused. "Tenants?" I patted her arm lightly. "The people who'll be renting the house next month." Her smile twitched. "I'm sure I mentioned it," I added. "I listed the property last week. It was snatched up in 2 days. Sweet couple, just had a baby themselves. Kind people. Grateful." Rachel's mouth parted. I could see her lips struggling to curl back into a grin. "You're selling it?" "No, just renting it. The trust still owns it, of course. But I figured if it wasn't being appreciated by family, it might as well help a new one grow." It was her turn to nod now, slowly, pretending it didn't sting. "Oh, well, I suppose, we all need to move on eventually." I leaned in, quietly. "Yes. And it's so much easier when the leech maid is holding the deed." Her eyes went wide, just for a flash. Just long enough. That was for the company party. I stayed for less than an hour, long enough to be photographed, long enough for the right people to see me walk out with my head high. Then I went home and packed up the last few things I had left in that house. A few books, some linens, the rocking chair Thomas had fixed for me one Mother's Day. I had the moving company take everything else to my new place, a modest but charming townhome a few blocks from the library. I left the house pristine. Even polished the fixtures. Let the past echo through the clean silence. And then I left the key under the mat for the new tenants. Rachel called 2 days later. "Why would you do this?" she asked, voice sharp, panicked. I already explained. "It's not revenge, dear. It's real estate." "But where am I supposed to live?" "You have options. The same ones I had when you kicked me out. Friends, hotels, your own family. Or you can use that influencer platform you love so much and crowdsource a solution. That seems to work for you." Her voice cracked. "The kids need stability. You're hurting them." "No," I said, firm. "You used them as a shield. I gave you a home, you gave me disrespect. That's the end of it." Silence on the line. I ended the call. Later that week, I received another letter, this one from her lawyer. A half-hearted threat about undue emotional stress and poor treatment of a grieving family member. Joe read it, chuckled, and sent a one-line reply, "Client is within full legal rights. Please refrain from further contact unless necessary." I thought Rachel would fight harder. But she didn't. Maybe she was finally tired. Or maybe she realized that when you build a house on someone else's name, they can just as easily take the keys back. The new tenants moved in quietly. The kids were sweet. They brought me cookies and invited me to their baby's first birthday party. I didn't go, but I sent a card and a toy truck Thomas would have liked. As for Rachel, I heard she moved to a small condo 2 towns over. She started teaching yoga again, leaned hard into the new beginnings narrative. I still saw her pop up on social media sometimes, carefully curated photos of smoothies and sunsets, hashtags about strength and healing. Let her have it. Let her spin whatever story made her feel like the hero. I didn't need applause. I had peace. And sometimes, that's the loudest victory of all. I'll never forget the silence of that first morning in my new place. The kind of quiet that doesn't press on your chest like loneliness, but sits beside you, like an old friend. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sun roll across the street outside. For the first time in a long while, I felt steady. There were no footsteps overhead. No passive-aggressive slams of cabinet doors. No cold stares across the dinner table. Just my thoughts, the chirping of birds, and the creak of my favorite rocking chair. Thomas would have loved this place. It wasn't fancy, but it had character, Worn wood floors, sun-soaked walls, a little garden out back. I'd even started growing tomatoes again. Something I hadn't done since before Rachel moved in. Some days, I still heard his laugh in my mind. Still pictured him sneaking into the kitchen to steal one of my pies before it cooled. I missed him in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes so strong it knocked the breath out of me. But with every passing week, I found a little more room to breathe. Word got around, of course. About the house. About the grandmother who evicted her own daughter-in-law. Some people whispered with judgment. Others smiled with quiet respect. I didn't care either way. I knew what I'd lived through. I knew what I'd survived. Rachel tried once more to provoke me. She showed up at the new tenant's house, unannounced. Claimed she was just checking on the roses. Said they had sentimental value. The young woman who lived there, kind as she was, politely told her to leave. When Rachel refused, her husband called the police. The next day, I received a voicemail. "You've made your point," Rachel snapped. "But don't forget, I still carry Thomas's name. That house was his legacy. Not yours." I didn't respond. Instead, I wrote a letter to her lawyer. It read, "Please inform your client that the estate was reviewed by the court, per her own challenge. The house is held in a legal trust, owned solely by me. The matter is closed. If she'd like to remember Thomas, she may do so in peace, but not on property she tried to steal from his mother after his death." It was short, sharp, final. She never contacted me again. 1 year passed. Then 2. The couple renting the house sent me a card every Christmas, with photos of their daughter growing up. I kept them in a drawer beside my bed. Not because I missed the house, but because it reminded me what real family looked like, even when built from strangers. Joe, my lawyer, retired and invited me to his daughter's wedding. I wore the same navy dress from the baby shower. He introduced me as the toughest woman I've ever met, and I accepted the title proudly. And then one spring afternoon, something unexpected arrived in my mailbox. A letter. No return address. Just my name, written in slightly messy cursive. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it. "Rachel. Evelyn. I don't expect you to respond. I'm not writing to fix things. I lost the baby a few months after that shower. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know how. And after everything, I didn't think you'd care. But you should know, I think about Thomas every day. And sometimes I even think about you, and how maybe, just maybe, if I'd treated you differently, none of this would have happened the way it did. I hope you're well. R." I sat with that letter in my lap for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, slow, steady, calm. She was right about one thing, it didn't change anything. The damage had already been done. The lies, the disrespect, the betrayal. Her grief, though real, didn't erase the choices she made while I was still raw and broken from losing my only son. But the letter told me something else, too. It told me that she'd never forget what happened. That she couldn't rewrite the past, not in her mind, not on Instagram, not to the neighbors. Because deep down she knew. She tried to erase me. But I held the pen. And I rewrote the ending. Not with vengeance. Not with violence. But with strength. Quiet, persistent strength. And that, I think, is what justice really looks like. Not slamming doors or screaming matches. But living well. Living freely. Living on your own terms, after they tried to take everything from you. So now, every year on Thomas's birthday, I light a candle in my little kitchen. I make his favorite, banana cream pie, and I eat one slice while the sun sets over my small backyard. Then I wrap the rest up and give it to the neighbors. Because love, real love, doesn't die with someone's last breath. It lives in the things we pass down. In the kindness we choose. In the stories we tell, not the ones they try to silence. And I'll keep telling mine. Because I earned that right. And no one, not even the cruelest daughter-in-law, can take it away from me again.